Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to waste any more time. We got the dev interview today, 30 minutes straight of just loads of information, man. Grab a cup of coffee, sit down, let's jump right into it. Once again, me and Lance, my brother, we wanted to thank you guys. We really appreciate you taking the interview, talking to the community, getting with us. I appreciate the feedback and everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So, starting off really quick, right off the bat, easily the most consistent and common questions we get under our YouTube comment section, we see on Reddit, the forums, has got to be about dual spec and if it's going to be coming in Season of Discover. I'm sure you guys saw this one coming. I know you mentioned it at BlizzCon. You had a couple tweets here and there and teasers, hints and stuff. But with Phase 2 being like really big on class specs finally coming online, like Shadow Priest, Balanced Druid, Elemental Shamans, could you guys give us any updates on dual spec and if it's coming in Phase 2 or maybe later?
We see dual spec as something that has the potential to be a really big gold sink. And so implementing dual spec at lower levels would be kind of challenging, especially since so many players, as you know, in Phase 2 will be saving up to buy their mounts. But as for later phases, y'all will just have to wait and see. Perhaps you should start saving up just in case.
Awesome. Okay. All right. That's fair. So I guess we could go ahead and lead with that into Lance's questions.
So we really loved in BFD in Phase 1 the difficulty at the start of the phase. We're wondering, is Gnomer going to launch with a similar difficulty, or is it going to be closer to like the post-nerf?
So, great question. I think the short answer is generally speaking, when we launch a new raid or something, we tend to try and have it be a little bit tend towards the more difficult rather than easier. It's significantly easier to kind of tone a raid down or a dungeon down than it is to kind of tone it up if it's a little lacking. So I wouldn't say we're specifically trying to necessarily make it as hard as BFD was or harder, but it will likely be a little bit more challenging for the first few groups that go in there. And it's simply because too, a lot of those first groups that really kind of sweat for it and go hard at it, they may not have all the runes, they may not have, the best pre-raid gear they can get, so that they'll likely have a tougher time. But just like BFD, we took some pretty quick action pretty early on for things that were a little bit outliers. And we'll almost certainly do the same here if anything is super out of whack.
We also wanted to talk, speaking on Gnomergan, additionally, we wanted to talk a little bit about how maybe the resistances might work in there as well. I'm sure you guys have seen on the forums and stuff also. I know in BFD, certain bosses like Gamura had the high armor, Kelris, pre-nerf had a lot of high magic resist. Can we expect a similar type of situation heading into Gnomergan with the mechanicals? Because some of them are immune to a lot of different things. Can you give maybe some feedback and information going along that?
Sure. So I think it's safe to say nothing will be outright immune to like bleeds and poisons and stuff like that. However, there will be likely additional resistance. It will certainly not be as punishing as BFD was to casters early on. That was probably too punishing, and we learned some lessons there. But yeah, I mean, we want to keep it thematic. Bosses having resistances is a very vanilla mechanic, and that's something we do want to keep thematic. But I don't think it's going to make a ton of difference in the long run to most classes. So I wouldn't stress about it too much, but there'll be a little something.
Yeah, no, that's good news. A lot of people were really concerned about some of their specs and stuff. Heading into Gnomergan, especially warriors and rogues. We also had the community ask a few times as well about world bosses. Is there any way or a time frame that you guys are going to be adding potentially more world bosses? Maybe can provide us with extra loot, maybe make the world feel more alive to get us out there instead of just hopping inside of raids and doing battlegrounds and stuff?
I think you'll have to get out there and see what you find. I like, we like to say never. And I don't think I would call this, I don't think this qualifies as a world boss particularly, but there is, you may find different creatures out in the world. There is a particularly terrifying blood-crazed troll wandering around Stranglethorn Vale that we previewed that goes by the name of Kadamu. I recommend avoiding him at all costs, though. I don't think you'll have a particularly good time if you choose to fight him.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that in the preview. That looked really, really interesting.
I will say that for those who do like to embrace danger, if you're in the proximity of Kadamu and you're fighting other people, that could make for an interesting and rewarding encounter. So keep an eye out for him. Keep a safe distance.
I like that word, rewarding. I like that.
Mhm.
That always, in my mind, it just a bunch of loot pops up in my head. So that sounds pretty cool.
All right, so is there any concern among the team that with like the increase in power through the new items and the runes, that might trivialize the open world or even the dungeons we're going to be doing in this next phase?
Power creep is something that's kind of always, on our minds. I will say that overall, the open world is already quite a bit more dangerous in Season of Discovery than it is in regular Classic era to kind of help make up for that. We'll continue to keep an eye on things as the season unfolds because, we do want to make sure that the world continues to feel dangerous.
Yeah, a lot of what we would have done here, we've done kind of with feedback in mind. Like we have heard a lot of the same complaints going into phase 1. People saw the previews at BlizzCon and they're like, the world's going to be completely trivial. And I don't think I've heard a ton of feedback to that effect in actuality. And so I think we did a pretty good job in phase 1, and we're going to kind of keep that sort of curve going if that makes sense. So, yeah. But we always interested to hear about it. One of the other things I will say about outdoor difficulty too is that we do think it's important. Like, we never want to get into a situation where we'll actually one-to-one scale it with like your item level or anything like that. That's a very like Modern has tried that at various points to various degrees of success, and we do really think, and they kind of arrived at this conclusion as well after doing it the first time. I think it was in Legion or at the end of Legion, that it is important to have power progression on your character. And while the world may feel pretty dangerous when you're leveling, as you gear up, as you get all your runes, as you get your best in slot from dungeons and raids, it will start to feel less dangerous, and that's a good feeling. That's a good progression. And so that's something we do want to make sure we maintain. But we think it's going to be a little bit spicier than than you might remember it, just like phase 1 was.
Yeah, I will say, like, I feel like that's a reoccurring theme throughout all of World of Warcraft. It's always a struggle as you're leveling and then finally reaching max level. But then once you get that raid gear, you feel a lot more powerful and killing monsters, doing whatever it may be. So that is awesome. That Season of Discovery, even though you're getting all these new things, that still is the case, which is really, really good. We wanted to ask a pretty big one. I know this is a really loaded question. Do you guys have any plans for our characters on this server at the end of Season of Discovery? Will we transfer maybe to Era and, lose all the runes and items? Will they just be completely gone? Do you guys have any updates on maybe advancing Season of Discovery on its own? Or do you guys have anything to sort of add to that?
So this is kind of a difficult question to answer for a lot of reasons. I think it's safe to say we likely won't take your characters to like a strictly no changes original WoW world. And they certainly won't go to an existing era realm, because at the end of the season, you're going to have so much new gear and so many new things that they would be it would be harmful potentially to an existing era realm to inject all that into. Yeah. So that's something we're very cognizant of. But that said, we're still discussing what the final home will be. Will it maybe be some sort of evergreen version of Season of Discovery? Will it be a new environment entirely that is somewhere between Season of Discovery and Era? I think the overall goal is to make sure you end up someplace cool, someplace interesting. And hard to say what that specifically will be right now, but we're pretty committed to making sure you end up in a good place.
Awesome.
And just to add on to that too, like, we're still very far from the end of the season.
Yes.
So, this is one of those things that I think there's great opportunity for us to kind of shape the future based on player feedback. So let us know what you think.
Yeah. No, yeah. The community, especially the WoW players, they will let you know what they think. They're very open about how they feel. So that's good. That's good. It's good news to hear.
Can we expect any changes to any of the SM wings in phase 2? Will they all be open? Could we consider them? I know we saw them like accidentally leaked at BlizzCon that it might be a raid in the future. Is anything going to change there?
No changes to Scarlet Monastery. You can expect it to behave how you'd expect to. It's 5-player dungeons. A lot of those images, just to kind of touch on that, a lot of those images at BlizzCon that we accidentally included in our slides, sort of, I've answered this a few times, and I usually say that they represent aspirations and things and potential ideas more than fully formed thoughts or like a roadmap of stuff we've committed to. We want to keep the surprises coming, and and keep the actual roadmap of what specific content we plan to tackle a mystery as long as possible.
Gotcha. Guildbanks, instant mail, 41-yard nameplates, and also like stuff like enchanting vellums. These are all just like quality of life things we get asked about every day in the comments, in the forums, on Reddit. Is there any sort of plan to introduce some of these things inside a Season of Discovery? I know you're kind of on a pretty tough line because people want that classic feel, but they don't want too many quality of life things to where it feels like retail WoW. Do you guys have any thoughts on some of these things being in the game?
That's a really long question with a lot of potentially different answers. I think in terms of quality of life, there's always things that are on the table there, and we're always looking at what sort of like interface improvements we can make tactically to make the game make more sense or a little bit easier to actually use, like actual literal quality of life. One thing in particular you mentioned there are a few things in that category that are actually just not quality of life. They're major systemic gameplay affecting things. 41-yard nameplate comes to mind with them. The example I use when we talk about this is if you're in a cave and it's a multi-level cave, if you have 20-yard nameplate, your field of view is sort of limited, and what you can tell is around you. And as we just discussed, one concern that folks have is, will the original WoW world feel too easy with all of this extra power? Well, that is actually a power gain too. Having perfect situational awareness up to like your max, like 41-yard range, gives you a ton of advantage to see mobs above you, see mobs below you, and it makes you less careful about how you navigate those tight and close spaces. Now, that's not to say we won't do it, but what I'm getting at is that these are things we have to actively think about whenever we make changes, because we can very easily get into a situation where in the moment one of us is annoyed that I can't see the thing I'm shooting at as a mage. I can't see the gameplay. It's like, that's annoying. We should change that. But once we change that, there's no going back. Like that will be an expectation forever. Modern is the way modern is because of incremental iteration over time. And modern is great for what it is. But I think there are definitely some changes that have been made to World of Warcraft over the years that had longer lasting ramifications than maybe people planned for. And so I think a lot of people are asking for like, things like this is like, and just any change is like, I really want Classic Plus, but I don't think many people are really asking for Modern Minus. And I don't think we really want to get into a place where we make Modern Minus.
Modern Minus. I've never heard of that before. That's a new one.
So it's just something we have to think about. So the short answer is, we're always looking at that kind of stuff. The long answer is that we have to be very careful where seemingly innocuous changes to ameliorate specific minor concerns may have larger impacts on the game writ large.
So keeping it in the convenience or quality of life style of question, another thing we constantly get asked about is like a pet or mount tab. I know there might be some extra mounts or pets that we get in Season of Discovery. Any idea if we might get something like that?
So I mean, bag space is indeed a premium in Classic. The short answer is we won't have anything planned for that at the moment. But the longer answer, I think, kind of piggybacking on what Josh already said, as we kind of think about Season of Discovery and how it represents Classic, but with, a bunch of changes, one of the things that has been on our minds is, what sorts of quality of life features make sense in Classic era without fundamentally changing player behavior in such a way that moves us too far from what makes Classic feel like Classic. Certainly the mounts and pets thing, like that's a different category than the nameplates quality of life thing that folks are requesting. But, one thing we might consider with, bag space, for instance, perhaps having limited bag space actually forces you to make trips to town more frequently, and your presence in town is what maybe makes the town feel more alive. So that's one of the things we might consider when we kind of weigh these quality of life features. There's definitely, room for some of them, but it's something that we have to be really considerate about as we move forward.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You don't want to, go too far with it, I suppose. Moving into like the next question. So in the What's New video for WoW Classic Season of Discovery, you guys released before Phase 1, it showed a Waste Rune slot for Paladins that had actually the Howling Blast Death Knight ability, which was pretty exciting to a lot of people. Do you think we could expect some sort of Death Knight variant for Paladins heading into later phases? I know, for even getting some of the runes, we were getting teased by the NPCs about how you could potentially be seeing more stuff like this? Is that something that could be coming?
So as we kind of designed runes in the season, we've said this before, but we've been very, fantasy forward. We had various archetypes in mind when designing our runes. For example, for shaman tanks, we were kind of thinking like it's kind of an earth warden type figure.
Mm-hmm.
And for rogues, we kind of have some runes that help you live up to a class fantasy of being a pirate or a swashbuckler. And so, kind of thinking in terms of that, I know some folks saw, that the Howling Blast Death Knight ability. As we kind of went around about our process for designing runes, we did a lot of moving runes, stealing kind of like abilities and spells from later expansions and just kind of seeing how they felt on these classic characters. And certainly we had way more runes in the beginning than we, could possibly manage. It was just way too much complexity. And so we did have to cut down quite a bit. That being said, I never want to rob you of your hope. So I'll just say, you'll have to kind of see how the season progresses and, see what you discover.
Yeah, a lot of times just for insight on how those things get made. There's a lot of like temp assets and promote and things that they kind of cobble together for those promotional videos. So I wouldn't necessarily read too much into it, but
same with the data mining.
Yeah,
same thing there. Yeah.
Like, it is fun. I don't want to like Nora said, I don't want to crush anything. It's fun to do what if scenarios, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily expect paladins to be running around howling blasting people anytime soon.
That's funny. Yeah, WoW players, man, they take one thing and they go a mile with it. So
I love it. It's a feature, not a bug.
So moving on, in the recent update you guys gave us for the new PvP event in Stranglethorn, we know it will be a free-for-all event. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you plan to stop people from just getting into a giant raid and zerging down like very small packs of people? Also what about like win trading and stuff like that? That's a very big question in the community.
I mean, as for the getting together in massive raids and zerging people down, mess around and find out, I guess. I don't think it's going to be a good idea to get together in a massive raid group.
You'll see. Give it a try. See what happens.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, as for like win trading and things like that, like when designing something like this, we really want to try and make something that is fun first, and then sort of like shore up the exploits and shenanigans a little bit later. Like we have some things in mind for that. I'm not super worried about it. There will always be someone who tries to find a way to actively avoid like PvP in a PvP event. There's also a lot of self-policing the community can do for some things. I'm not necessarily saying win trading, but just shenanigans in general. If you're running around in a group of 5 and you're trying to do something, you're going to have to be in the zone, and you're going to have to be, around other people that are wanting to PvP. And you may find that you're a ripe target if you're trying to pull off some shenanigans for an actual organized group that actually is tooled up to fight. But like anything, Ashen Veil, we're making adjustments for days and weeks afterwards, and if we need to, we'll just keep adjusting it. I'm not super worried about it.
Back to like the data mining and maybe taking things with a grain of salt. We noticed that some of the items for PvP specifically for this event are interesting to say the least. In particular, that hunter bow with the strength proc it's something, right? And casters only receiving like spell power rings. I just want to know maybe a little bit of the thought process behind some of these strange items.
One thing, so the hunter bow in particular, let me just point out something someone might not have noticed. That effect, that's not an on-hit effect. That's an equip effect. And there's a key difference there. That means it can proc off of multiple different things, not just shots with the bow. So I think in general, what we're trying to do with a lot of itemization in Season of Discovery is give little nods to some of the new things we've added. Like you might notice cloth items with extra armor on them. Could be pretty good for a Warlock tank. You might notice a bow with an on-equip, not an on-hit strength proc might be kind of good for a melee hunter. So that's the things we're thinking about. I think I've seen a lot of comments from some of the data mining about like weapon speeds and stuff like that. I think some earlier versions had some old data values, but even the newer version, they're like, why isn't this optimal? Why isn't this 3.8 speed or 3.6 speed? It's like, does Blizzard not know how to itemize? It's like, yeah, we know how to itemize, but it's a level 40 raid. And if it's not optimal, it's probably because we don't mean for it to be perfectly optimal. And generally speaking, we're okay with some of the things that come from the raids or the PvP being like pre-bis at 60 and stuff like that. But we want to get out of situations where you feel like you have to use any of these items forever. And so we're trying to be pretty methodical with how we design the items to make them very good at the level, but maybe have a little bit of diminishing returns as you level up and find other stuff.
That's awesome.
I hope that kind of answered your question.
Greatest answer you could have given, man.
Yeah.
I will say, I think in just to build up on top of that, like I think in phase 2 we've been, we've really doubled down on trying to add an even more diverse range of items. As a team, a lot of us play WoW, so there's a fair amount of putting ourselves in players' shoes and going, okay, what would be really exciting for me to, find? And so, yeah, I'm really excited for players to encounter some of the cool items we've added.
That's awesome. That's awesome. My particular favorite one is, and probably a fan favorite, was the totem for the shaman enhancement. I thought that was so cool, man. I love that one.
Throwback to original WoW cinematic.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I remember I saw that as a kid and I was freaking out. I thought it was so cool. Something that I've personally always loved in future iterations of WoW is that there are a really good amount of battlegrounds to sort of participate in and enjoy. Do you guys have any plans on maybe adding new BGs for Season of Discovery, or even potentially bringing some other ones from other iterations of WoW into Season of Discovery?
No plans on that at the moment. Would love to continue, hearing player feedback on that, what they'd like to see.
Awesome.
Nothing to announce right now.
All right.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, sounds cool.
That's kind of like what you said the other day, Sky. So we've really enjoyed all the cool Easter eggs, like the Tauren Rogue that teaches the shaman the dual wield rune, and other cool things like that have kind of been added to the game. I'd love to know, is Season of Discovery an alternate reality from the main classic universe or the retail game? Or does it have any implication on maybe the future story of WoW, or just in general, the Warcraft universe?
This is a great question. I think it's safe to say, I think we've already kind of commented on this and said, I hope we have anyway, because I'm about to say something here. I don't know, but I hope it's not new news.
I think we have, yeah.
I think we have, but I wouldn't call it an alternate reality. I don't think we really want to get into sort of timey-wimey shenanigans with Season of Discovery. I think it's more of like, this is just a little bit expanding on the world as you knew it. And we were very careful and very deliberate to try not to stomp on any existing lore or anything that came afterwards. And you're not ever really going to see us likely do that too much. We might create new questions that you might wonder about, and that's cool. But, a lot of things, I think at BlizzCon in interviews, we described this as like sort of like any change to any character or anything we add to any character or add to the world is like found photographs. It's basically like, you were digging through pictures from your parents' photographs and you found them on vacation somewhere you never knew they went. Didn't really change how you think about that person, but it does give you a little bit more insight and a little bit more, I never knew that about this character or this location or whatever. And that's cool. It's just expanding the world as it was, really, rather than trying to redefine anything.
So we really love that Void Touch quest line that we got with the BFD and the Shadowy figure, and that awesome dialogue we got with that quest chain that gets those items for leatherworking and stuff like that. Is there any chance we get to see her again, perhaps, or maybe get any more gifts from the Void?
It's been really interesting to watch the commentary on that. Hard to say. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
I love that. I love that. I also, speaking of like quest lines and stuff, I really enjoyed the, that Paladin had the really long quest chain that was really deep for Divine Storm. And then, Warlock had the same for, Metamorphosis. I was a little bit sad to see that not all classes had these grandiose, awesome quest chains. Could we expect some of these classes to get some of these really awesome, deep, lore-rich quest chains heading into the future in Season of Discovery?
Oh, I was going to give the generic, you'll have to wait and see type answer, because it's one of those things, like, we don't want to spoil too much up front.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases we tried to do things that made sense, but we recognize that, depending on a lot of factors, your preference or your whatever, there may have been some inequality there for some classes, and awesome. Obviously we have a team of designers and they all kind of have their own sort of input and touch they put on everything, and so we're trying to get a little bit more consistency as we mature a little bit into the later phases.
Okay, cool. I also had one other additional question. It was actually about the banning of GDKPs, and what is sort of like the measure of success for like, okay, this ended up being really well. We're gonna keep it in the next phases. Let's just keep it going. Like, what is the sort of measure and the yardstick for saying that sort of thing?
This is another tricky one to answer. Really, like we're going into this, we're hoping that it has a more positive impact on social ties, like people going and joining guilds, forming regular raid groups, things like that. That's hard to measure, though. That's really that's almost like a feeling, right? The thing that is a little bit easier to measure is how successful are we at being able to cut down the amount of illicit activity in the game and gold selling and gold buying. Obviously, we're looking at that stuff pretty closely with this, and also just the other benefit we get from removing GDKP is sort of it helps remove a common obfuscation for a lot of bad behavior, whereas GDKP is a good blanket way to launder a lot of gold, and that makes it a little bit more tricky and a little bit more nuanced to be able to actually catch people who are not just selling gold but buying gold. And so that's one of the things that we're kind of excited about with this is that might help in there a little bit. So there's a lot to it. I don't know. I can't really get too deep into it. I don't want to give anybody the keys to the castle to bypass anything we're doing. But there's definitely data and metrics we're going to look at, but there's also just do we think it has a positive impact on the game and how the game feels? And that's something that is harder to define, but we're all players too. So
in terms of just how how it feels, like we again lean on player feedback for that. So let us know what you think, how it if you've noticed a detriment or like an improvement to your experience.
Awesome. And one last final question. You were sort of touching on like how people can sort of like read between the lines and get away with something without actually doing something against TOS. Like, I would love to know if there was any clarifications on what isn't allowed, what is allowed.
The reality is a horse by any other name is a horse, right? Like, there's a lot of people think they're very clever and they're coming up with ways to try and bypass this, but I don't, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it Alliance kill points. You can call it commodity DKP, Arcanite bar DKP or whatever. It is what it is, and you know what it is. I don't want to be super specific right here and give a way for someone to spell out how to bypass rules. We're looking at more than just gold, and we have a lot of ways to look at this.
That's awesome.
And ultimately, I think that no matter what happens, it's going to greatly decrease the sort of frequency and volume around this, and that's something that's going to be, I think, a positive to come from this too. You're not going to see your trade chat spammed with nothing but GDKP advertisements.
And no matter what, with this policy and with other policies, there's almost always going to be some amount of what feels like to players gray area. But I will say, at that point, it's kind of up to the interpretation, by the folks that we have enforcing these, our terms of service. And I would just say, it's up to the players to, figure out what level of risk they're willing to incur by engaging in some of these activities.
Yeah. Once again, thank you guys, man. I know it's probably a madhouse over there, what you guys are doing. It's, once again, you guys are kicking butt, dude. I've played a lot of video games. Man, you guys are on point. You guys are really, really on top of it.
Give you some cute thumbnails. Josh, do some kind of a
thumbnail face. I love that.
That's a thumbnail.
I love that, dude. Thank you guys so much, man. I appreciate it. Once again, you guys are kicking butt, dude. You make, I guess, my job super easy to just come on here and make content about the game and bring people updates based off what you guys are doing. It's so much fun. And Nora, get on Twitter a little more. I want to see some more opinions from you too.
I'm so shy.
I'm sick of hounding Agron for his tweets like some weirdo, man.
You're going through and looking at what I like.
It's so bad. It's so bad. I know, but this is how you get the real juice,
I've started to misdirection like things.
Good. Dude, that's awesome. That's
so awesome. Start liking some really weird stuff.
I've already done that.
I appreciate you guys for your time. Really, it means the world for a person like me. So thank you.
Thanks, you so much.
I appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.
Have a good one, guys.
Have a good Monday. See ya.
Okay, man, they had a lot of really good information in that interview. A lot of it was loaded questions. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to answer, but You guys got to let me know in the comment section below what was your favorite answer so far and what you're excited for. I appreciate all love and support, ladies and gentlemen. Really, you guys make it an absolute pleasure to be making content for you all. My name's Scott from the Comeback Kids. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.